Hi students, and welcome to today's live IELTS class. My name is Adrian. I'm streaming to you from the beautiful city of Victoria here in Canada. I hope that everybody has had a fantastic week, and I hope that you will have an awesome weekend here in Canada. We have a long weekend coming up. It's Victoria Day long weekend, celebrating Queen Victoria the First, of course, as Canada is a British Commonwealth country. Welcome, Kyber. Hi, Amrit. Good to have members in our class. Welcome, Carolina, our chat moderator, helping out our students. This is a members chat class, but of course, everybody is welcome to watch, and there will be lots of great information coming up about IELTS Writing Task 2. IELTS Writing Task 2 is more or less the same for both the academic and the general versions of the exam. In most cases, it is some kind of a persuasive essay, a persuasive piece of writing. Persuasive means to persuade, it means to convince. You basically have to express a position, an argument, a point of view. And that point of view in this class will be focusing on the concept of urban and rural life in some way. So that's going to be kind of interesting. And of course, these materials are coming from aehelp.com for academic IELTS. And for general IELTS, it's gieltshelp.com. Please visit those websites for your IELTS learning. They will help you to prepare and get the best score possible. Our academic IELTS website looks like this. It's got this blue background. This is aehelp.com. And to join our premium IELTS package, you simply just click this big red button there. It's a one-time payment for lifetime access. So, and of course, in this class, as usual, we try to give some kind of an advantage to people who are watching these live classes. So you can use the discount code, and I believe the discount code is XR9T, if I remember correctly off the top of my head. Yes, it is, and that will give you a 25% discount on the price. The prices are different in different countries, so check it out. Check how much it is in your country. I believe in India it's about $25, same with Vietnam, so 25% discount. I think it's like $17, $18. Something like that. This is the general IELTS here. It's gieltshelp.com. Again, just simply click this big red button to join our premium IELTS package. We are an official British Council test registration center and certified agents, so you are in great hands with us for your IELTS learning, students. Okay, if you have questions, you can certainly get a hold of me by sending me an email. My email is adrian@aehelp.com. So send me an email there and we will answer your questions in 24 hours or less. And again, don't forget this code XR9T when you visit the websites. All right, everybody. So we've got a couple of classes today. We will have an all chat class, or I should say a subscriber chat class coming up after this one. That'll be in just a little less than 2 hours. And that will be a reading class. That will be a reading class on the topic of touchscreens. So that'll be fun. And then tomorrow we'll have writing task 1 for members, and we'll have speaking part 3 for everybody. Okay, let's take a look at our writing task 2 question, which is right here. Okay. All right, Kyber, I'm glad that you're happy about having more writing classes. Yeah, we try to balance it with the amount of demand for certain topics. So the greatest demand is definitely for speaking, then it's kind of writing and reading are about the same, in distant second, and then in third place is listening. So we try to balance it with those requirements. By the way, we did just release a new reading video on our channel, a new HD reading video, so check that out, everyone, when you get the chance. It's a good video. It's about 14 minutes long, and it gives you good reading practice and a lot of great strategy as well. Okay, so step number 1, when you get to task 2 of the writing, and as you can see, writing says that you should spend 40 minutes on this task. That's how much you should spend. The writing section is 60 minutes. It's 1 hour, and they recommend 20 minutes for task 1 and then 40 minutes for task 2. That also makes sense because task 1 is 1/3 of your mark, so about 33% of your mark, and then task 2 is 2/3 of your mark, so let's say 66-67% of your mark. So you definitely want to allocate the proportionate amount of time to each one of these, which means that you're spending 40 minutes on task 2. And of course, it's also the longer essay. So task 2 is 250 words minimum. It's at least, okay? We always remind students and candidates that you don't lose marks for writing more than 250 words, but you do lose marks for writing less than 250 words. So, and again, examiners, we work with examiners, we have examined students. Examiners work for us, past examiners, and they all say that they basically cannot remember giving somebody a band 9 when they write just 250 words, which means you usually need a little bit more, okay, to get those higher band scores. So write more. All right. Okay, so first step is to read the question carefully. So let's do that now. Let's read this question really carefully. So IELTS writing task 2, you should spend about 40 minutes on this task. Development and improved life quality often happens in big cities, but not in rural areas. What problems can happen as a result of this? How can this be changed? Give answers and explanations. Okay, good. So we've read this question. It's clearly a persuasive essay. What voice should I use for this essay? So what is the voice? Let's start with that kind of a question. That's an interesting question here. You should always decide that. You should recognize and decide what voice the essay is right away. So what author voice should I use for this essay based on this question? Now, I'll give you a little hint here. The voice of task 2 is either going to be first person or third person voice. So it will be either first person or third person voice of the author for task 1. Or sorry, task 2. Task 1 is always third person. So for this task 2, Rashika says it's third person. Rashika, why? But you're correct. Okay. So the answer is third person objective voice of the author. That means you must avoid using I, me, my, you, us, we. Okay? Instead, you should use people, citizens, locals. So I'm thinking about when I'm coming up with these nouns, I'm already thinking about people who live in cities and individuals who live in towns. So people, citizens, locals, individuals. Okay. So use those kinds of nouns instead. All right. Okay, and the reason why is because when you look at this question, and I bet that's why Rashika knew the answer, when you look at this question, it doesn't ask for your opinion, okay? So notice that this question does not ask for your personal opinion, okay? When it does not ask for your personal opinion, it is very important that you do not give your personal opinion, okay? So, especially in the academic IELTS, okay? So if you're not asked for your personal opinion, don't start writing, I believe that, okay? Or I think that people should, all right? Okay, so there is no first person, so no using I, me, my in this case, all right? Okay, so now that we're clear on the voice, we need to be clear on a couple of other important points. And to help us with that, what we can do is we can paraphrase this question, okay? So paraphrase the question, okay? This will give you vocabulary, ideas, for your essay, and clarity. All right. So, development and improved life quality. Okay, well, what does that mean? So think about towns, think about cities, okay? Let's paraphrase this together. I see that we've got lots of members in the class now. So we've got Laura, we've got Yarabisha, nice to see you in the class. We've got Khyber, Amrit, Rashika, Sanjay. So we've got lots of people in here, okay? I'm going to paraphrase this, and I see that Khyber's already on it. I'm not sure, Khyber, if you did this for homework or not, but that's great. Okay, so I'm going to do the same. Development is often referred to as advancement and comfort. So advancement and comfortable living is more often observed in urban areas than the countryside. So urban areas are cities, countryside, rural areas, okay, towns, villages, and so on. So advancement and comfortable living is often more observed in urban areas than the countryside. What challenges can result from this? What can be done to improve this? Okay. And then give clarity for the response. Sure. All right. So when you do this at home, when you're practicing, when you're getting ready, and by the way, students, this is exactly how you should approach your university essays as well. So it's no wonder that IELTS has this kind of a question, because it's very synonymous to the type of writing that you will do often in your courses in university when you go to university in countries like the UK, Australia, Canada, US. So you write quite a few essays. During my studies in psychology, I wrote several hundred essays at least during my 5 years. So, and a lot of them were, most of them were persuasive essays, and most of them were third-person voice. Of course, the big difference is in university, you have to do research and you have to cite research in your essays, and they're longer and they're more complicated, but the basic concept is the same. So it's always good to understand your question, because if you write on the wrong question, then you will get a very low mark, if not a fail. So you have to avoid that situation at all cost. And to do that, you paraphrase. And when you paraphrase, read the original question and then read your paraphrasing, okay? So development and improved life quality often happens in big cities, but not in rural areas. What problems can happen as a result of this? How can this be changed? Give answers and explanations. Advancement and comfortable living are more often observed in urban areas than the countryside. What challenges can result from this? What can be done to improve this? Give clarity for the response. Okay, so we've got some clarity there, and I see that Khyber has some writing here as well. Let's take a look at what Khyber wrote, because as the idiom goes, there's more than one way to skin the cat, or skin a cat, and that means there's definitely a lot more than one way to paraphrase these questions correctly. So let's take a look at what Khyber has here, and then I'll give you some feedback. Khyber. Okay, Khyber writes, the standard of living develops more often in mega cities. Okay, let's change that a little bit. So the standard of living develops, instead of develops, because we kind of have development here, so we can use the word evolves. Faster. Instead of more often, let's say faster. So evolves faster. Okay. In mega cities. I don't know if I agree with you, Khyber. It's not just mega cities. And I think a better word than mega cities is metropolitan areas. Okay. We don't really use mega cities in everyday language. So, but metropolitan areas, okay, definitely. Metropolitan is an urban area. It's just a synonym. Rather than in rural settlements. Let's put another word there, because we have adjective and noun here. So we want parallel grammar, Khyber, so we're going to write rural settlements so that we have a adjective noun here as well, okay? What difficulties can arise as a consequence of this, and what methods can be used to change this? That's a nice paraphrase, Khyber. That's good. Okay. Some questions in IELTS actually look like that. All right. So very nice. Good, Khyber. All right. So this reads a bit better. Yeah, I mean, word choice is always a big challenge. And by watching these live classes, by the way, make sure to subscribe to our channel. If you like what you see, become a member of the channel. This is how you can develop your word choice, your vocabulary even further. So learning this use of the language here, for example, the standard of living evolves faster in metropolitan areas rather than in rural settlements. Let's have plural on both of those nouns. What difficulties can arise as a consequence of this, and what methods can be used to change this? All right, that's good. Okay, now we're cooking. All right, Amrit is cooking as well. Amrit says this. Amrit always start with a capital. Advancement and good lifestyle. Lifestyle is one word. Okay, sometimes it's tricky to know what words are one word and which words are two words. Advancement and good lifestyle, you made the same mistake as me, are, because you have two nouns. Okay, are often seen in urban areas rather than the countryside. Yeah. What are the issues behind this statement? You don't need statement. And what can be done to improve rural areas? Yeah, I mean, the question doesn't actually say that. What can be done to improve this? But we can infer that. That will come in your writing. Okay. All right. Good. Good. Okay. Laura says, you guys are cooking, I'm eating. Funny, haha. Yes, Laura, indeed. And now we're cooking, Laura. This idiom means that we are progressing. When we say now we're cooking, okay, it's an expression or an idiom. Now we're cooking. This is an idiom, which means we are progressing well. Okay, that's the meaning of now we're cooking. By the way, students, I mean, you often hear me use these kinds of expressions and idioms. They're very, very natural. You will hear them in everyday life. You will hear them in movies. You will hopefully use them in your own life. They're very, very common. So make sure to note them, practice them, apply them in your writing and in your speaking as quickly as possible so that you can learn them effectively. So now we're cooking. And now we're cooking is true because now we can go to our next step. This is basically step 2, which is identifying the topic and the controlling idea. So identify the topic of this task 2 and the controlling idea. Okay. So what is the topic here? Laura says, thank you. You're welcome, Laura. Yeah, if ever I say an idiomatic expression or a word where you're not clear about the definition or why I'm saying it, make sure to ask me in the chat. Okay, that's it's good to ask me in the chat because if you don't know, there's probably a few other people that don't know either. So definitely ask me. Okay. All right, so let's identify the topic and the controlling idea. So the topic, what is it? And when you're identifying the topic, always look at the original question, not your paraphrase. Okay. It's dangerous to look at the paraphrase because if your paraphrasing isn't accurate, then there's an extra degree of risk that you will have the wrong topic for your IELTS task 2 response. So you don't want that, okay? So what's the topic here? What is in discussion? Okay. So what is in discussion here? Development and improved life quality often happens in big cities, but not in rural areas. Okay. All right. What is it? So Amrit says the development of rural areas. Yeah, but it's also the development of cities, right, Amrit? So how can we say that? Okay, how can we say that? I use that kind of word there that'll help you. I think in my one of the paraphrases, yeah, in Kyber's paraphrase, I use the word. Okay. So yeah, all right, okay, I'm gonna give it to you. So let's see if somebody else comes up with it. So the development, so Kyber says faster development in urban areas rather than in rural areas. Yeah, we can say that. So we could say it's the faster development, that's what we're focusing on, or simply we could just say the development of human settlements. Okay. We could be a little bit more general, but Kyber, yours works as well. So as the topic, we're talking about faster development of cities than towns. Okay, we could say it that way as well. And then the controlling idea or ideas, right? So those are basically the questions surrounding the topic. Okay, so in this case, we're talking about the problems caused by varying rates of development and the solutions, right? In cities versus towns. Okay. So when we talk about this development of human settlements, what are we talking about? Okay, so what are we specifically referring to with development of human settlements? And here, what you want to do when you're working on your ideas, and of course in your IELTS exam, in your real exam, this is happening very quickly. Most of this is happening inside of your beautiful head, your wonderful brain, that supercomputer that sits on top of your shoulders. I should not have been shaking my head like that. Now I can't see straight. Anyway, yeah, it's the most incredible piece of machinery in our known universe. So most of these thoughts are going through your brain very, very quickly during the IELTS exam, especially when you're calm and focused and you're having a sip of water and you know what you're doing. And you're just basically jotting down key information. So you wouldn't actually need to write down the question, what are we specifically referring to with development? But you might write down the answer, okay? So in the official exam, write down the answer to the question of your critical thinking, right? So write down only notes for answers during your official exam. While you plan your essay. And that should be about 3 to 5 minutes. Sacrificing 3 to 5 minutes for good planning is great strategy because you can write much faster in the 35 minutes and much more accurately. Okay. So, what is that? Right? So what are what are we referring to with the development of human settlements? Okay. Well, I believe the answer here is infrastructure and services. Okay. So infrastructure and services. Infrastructure, we'll describe that more when we get to the how question, and services we'll discuss more when we get to the how question as well. But it's basically infrastructure and services. To keep it simple, remember the IELTS essay is only about 300 words. I'm saying 300 words because it's minimum 250. So it's only about 350 words for a band 8, band 9. So you don't want to get too much into detail. I mean, IELTS questions, viewers, members, keep in mind that these in university would be like anywhere from 1,500 to 5,000 word essays. I mean, people write books about these kinds of questions, okay? Like Kyber says, industries, hospitals, buildings, and more. Yeah, Kyber, focus, concentrate your thoughts. Don't ever get lost with the etc. and more, okay? If you're thinking etc. and more, then your reader's thinking etc. and more, and we're lost in the vast world of information. So concentrate, select, target, okay? Rashika says, new construction such as schools, businesses, organizations, job opportunities, basic necessities, yes, are more available in cities, yes. Absolutely. Those are the ideas. That's the how question. Why? So why? Okay, and this is often the heart of the question. So why are these services developed in settlements? Okay, so right now we're just looking at the topic. We're not actually thinking about cities and towns just yet. We're actually thinking about just the topic, right, which is the development of settlements. Okay, so why? Okay, so to improve the overall quality of life for people, to create a peaceful and prosperous society that is healthy and productive. Okay, so that's why we do that. So that's why we develop our settlements, right? Because at the end of the day, we are hoping that that will create a peaceful, happy, healthy, productive society for all of the citizens, okay? And then comes the how. So how is infrastructure improved? Okay, and then comes the answers, Rashika, that you put in there. So more schools, better roads, more jobs, hospitals, okay, better waterworks, communication technology like internet, telephones, things like that. Okay, so that's how it is improved. All right, those are the examples. Okay, and Amrit says using government funds. Yeah, and private, right? Okay, very good. All right, now we want to think about the controlling idea. All right, so now we want to ask the question, because these are the same in towns and rural or urban areas and cities. So we want to ask the second very important why question, right? Which is why is there generally more development in cities than in towns? What's the answer to that? Okay, so why do we see that? And these are the big ones. So these why questions, this is where you kind of want to spend an extra moment and make sure that you're coming up with the right answers, because having the right answers, and not just the right answers, but having good answers for these why questions will lend way to a great essay. Okay, so when you are in your IELTS, even if you're not going through as many steps or as much detail as what I'm showing you in the class right now, you definitely want to give extra attention to these why questions, because these are the heart of your essay. They become the thesis statement, they become your explanations. And if you are not thinking about it well, if you're not really asking the right why questions or giving the right why answers, then your chances of a high band are slim to none. Okay, so Rashika says because cities have larger populations. Okay, so what does that mean? Because cities have larger populations. So what, Rashika? Okay, let me be a little bit like that very forward teacher. I don't want to say aggressive, but it's like, so what? So what? You know, that teacher is like, so what? So what? So because cities have larger populations, therefore, I think it's important to finish this idea. There's a bit more to go here. Okay, Kyber says urban areas are more developed rather than rural because of the availability and facilities offered. Yeah, so because cities have larger populations, therefore they have that's why I'm like, what? I spelled that correctly. Therefore, they have more resources. Yeah, so what are those resources? More resources and greater demand, right? More people need more services, need more infrastructure, and they have more resources. What are those resources that they have, such as what? Money, for sure. There's more money in big cities than urban areas most of the time, right? Such as money. Technology, right? Big cities often are better equipped. They have more equipment. They have more construction vehicles. So they're better equipped for building as well. Okay. So they have more money, more technology, more skilled workers, right? That's a big one, right? You have more plumbers, more masons, more architects, more engineers. Of course, you're going to be able to advance faster when you have all those trained individuals. A town basically has to import all of that information, knowledge, skilled worker or skilled workforce in order to develop, right? And they're not able to pay as much. So why would an engineer go to a town when they're going to get a lower pay, right? You want to visualize that, okay? All right. And a good way to visualize that is how, right? So how can we see this? Okay, and this is where you want to think of specific examples, as that will help you for your essay. And I think the simplest example here is an architect, okay? So I can say talented architect is much more likely to work in a large city where they can earn a lot of money designing modern roads and buildings than in a small town. Okay? So that would be an immediate, but you could think of, for example, like a doctor, right? Small towns often have difficulty getting doctors because doctors prefer often to work in big cities. They have more patients, they make more money, they have more resources, they can treat their patients better, and doctors, want to help people as much as possible, and they can do that more in big cities, right? So there are quite a few examples of this, all right? I think we can see that in the chat. Our members are agreeing as well. Okay, so now that we have all this information, and this seems like a lot, I just spent almost 40 minutes on this part of task 2, but it really is the most important part. So a good foundation and good planning is the key to a band 7, 8, 9 essay or task 2 in IELTS. Without good planning strategy, you will not be able to get a good score. Okay, keep that in mind, everyone. Okay, so if anybody is thinking, I think Adrian is just wasting time here, this is way too much, then think again. Okay, so without good planning, hey, ironically, well, not ironically, but interestingly, that's also part of this topic, right? You have good planning in big cities because you have a lot of professionals who really plan the services and infrastructures in a big city. So that's why you have a good quality of life, because it's well planned. People aren't just flying by the seat of their pants. There's another great idiom for you today. Flying by the seat of one's pants. That's actually a very funny idiom. If you ever look that up visually, I love that idiom. It's a really funny one. It's literally like holding the bottom of your pants and then flying through the air like whee! And it basically means just doing an activity without really planning or having any idea of what's going on. And we say fly. It's one of my favorite idioms. If somebody asks me, Adrian, what's your favorite idiom? It's this one here. So flying by the seat of one's pants means to engage an activity without really having done any planning or having knowledge or knowing what's going on. Okay, so I definitely, yeah, Laura says without planning I got 6.5. Yeah, so definitely don't just do task 2 flying by the seat of your pants. I'm always amazed at how many students just start writing. They're like, they read the question, they're like, oh, I'm just gonna start writing. I'm just gonna start paraphrasing the question and then writing this essay we'll discuss. And it's like, ooh, band 6 at best, maybe even lower, band 6.5 if it's just perfectly written. So careful with that. Okay, you got to plan. And all of this planning, all of this work eventually leads into your thesis statement so that you're not flying by the seat of your pants. Okay. All right. So the thesis statement, again, it has to answer the question, the original question. So when you write your thesis, practice this at home, look at the original question. So development and improved life quality often happens in big cities and not in rural areas. What problems can happen as a result of this? How can this be changed? Okay, we have to make sure that we answer these questions. What problems can happen as a result of this? How can this be changed? All right. So, what are the problems that can happen and how can it be changed? All right. Let me write my thesis statement. You write a thesis statement and then we'll compare. Okay? So, due to greater rate of development in urban areas than towns, countries are losing, countries, let's go with societies, are losing essential sectors such as, I'm not going to explain that, are losing essential sectors and creating social castes. This can be remedied with more resources allocated to rural areas. Sure. Okay. So that's going to be my thesis statement here. I was kind of mumbling there as I was thinking through it. So I'm thinking about all of that information, right, that we just kind of planned in the last few steps of critical thinking. So due to greater rate of development in urban areas than towns, societies are losing essential sectors and creating social castes. Or social, instead of social castes, a better word is social segregation. Okay. All right. Essential sectors here, just so you're clear on what I mean, are, for example, agriculture. So farming, okay, which happens in the countryside, right? So we have to think about, what does society benefit from the countryside? We benefit farming and agriculture, right? And we can go into more details. There are more points, but I'm kind of catching the main one here. There's certain culture that we lose, right? So the countryside has its own kind of unique culture and society as well. But I'm not going to get into that cultural aspect because, again, it's IELTS. I'm not writing a 1,000-word essay here, okay? So essential sectors like agriculture, that's the main one, right? Farming. And creating social segregation. Social segregation means a division among society, such as the rich and the poor. The healthy, the sick, for instance, okay? So this is my thesis statement, and again, notice how I feel like I was a little bit off mark in my planning, but because I went back to the original question, I made sure that my thesis statement does focus on answering the key questions in this task 2. Okay, Amrit is asking what is meant by social segregation. Segregation, Amrit, another way to say is separation. Okay, segregate means to divide up, to separate. Okay, so social segregation, different segments of society. Okay, think about the word segments if you're familiar with that word. All right, okay, so now I can write my introductory paragraph. Okay. Let's stick this back to where it belongs, and then we'll write our introduction. All right. So for the introduction, okay, a good Band 9 introduction. For IELTS, of course, but also in university, needs a hook, background, and thesis. Okay, standard English. Not Adrian's advice only, but standard English. It's standard literature for standard rules of literature for persuasive writing. Okay, so introductory paragraph. Starting with the hook. The hook is a short fact that includes the topic and catches the reader's attention. Okay, that's what the hook is. So in this case, our topic, okay, is here. And the topic is development of human settlements. Okay. So in some way, we have to introduce this idea of developing human settlements in our hook. Okay, so catch the reader's attention. Be specific. Again, 350 words is not a lot. So you want to be specific as possible. And Kyber, Rashika, I will look at your thesis statements once we get to that in the introduction here in a moment. Okay. So I'm going to start with my hook. You do the same and then we'll compare. So there, I'm just gonna, if you think of the game Civilizations, I'm not sure if anybody plays that game, but that game comes to mind. That's basically all the game is, right? Is build, 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 develop, 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 more roads, more infrastructure, more infrastructure. Your citizens are happy, yay! So one primary goal, or we could probably even say, instead of saying one, we could say the primary goal of civilization is to develop human settlements as much as possible, right? However, as we just discussed, cities tend to develop much faster than rural areas because of the availability of resources such as workers, money, and what was the other one? This is where planning becomes important, because I remember I said three of these. So this is my background, by the way, right? And demand, yeah, more people, right? And greater demand. And that would already be my background. I should explain that clearly. I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. So here, I'm explaining to my reader right away what we're discussing and why we're talking about it. So what the discussion is and why we are discussing this. Okay, so these are my definitions and importance of the topic, right? So I'm defining this, and I am giving the importance of this. So however, cities tend to develop much faster than rural areas because of the availability of resources such as workers, money, and greater demand. Okay. So now I can take my thesis statement and just kind of plug it in at the end. Okay. All right. So here is my thesis. The thesis is the foundation of my essay. It tells the reader what I'm about to write in body paragraph 1, body paragraph 2. A lot of students, without even knowing, write the thesis statement. This essay will discuss the challenges of a faster development in urban areas than rural areas and provide some solutions. That is a thesis statement. That is a weak thesis statement. In university, your professor will not be satisfied with that kind of a thesis statement because it's unclear, okay? It does not tell your reader what you're actually going to write. It's just telling them an idea of what will be in the essay, but not specifically what you are discussing. So university professors don't like those kinds of general indirect thesis statements. And on the IELTS, to get those high band scores, again, it's better to have direct thesis statements, okay? All right. Now, when you finish an introductory paragraph, definitely reread it. So the primary goal of civilization is to develop human settlements as much as possible. However, cities tend to develop much faster than humans. Okay, so I have a lot of much going on here, so let's take that much out of here. And let's include for better quality of life, a reason up here, okay? So the primary goal of civilization is to develop human settlements as much as possible for better quality of life. However, cities tend to develop faster than rural areas because of the availability of resources, such as workers, money, and greater demand. Due to I got repetition of greater here, so a higher rate of development in urban areas than towns, societies are losing essential sectors and creating social segregation. This can be remedied with more resources allocated to rural areas. Okay, now I've got a great introductory paragraph. Amrit, I do see your super chat donation, and I do pay attention to those, so have a look here. This is Amrit's super chat donation for 40 rupees. And Amrit is asking, sir, how can I improve my complex grammar in writing? That's a great question, Amrit. You can improve your complex grammar by practicing your grammar, targeting grammar, so doing actual grammar practice sessions, like practicing your subordinating conjunctions, especially. So understanding cause and effect, condition, opposition, time conjunctions, and then being able to implement those. So look at grammar separately, Amrit, and then use it in your essay, okay? So do grammar exercises, and make sure those grammar exercises are related, so they're, on the topic. So for example, you could do a grammar exercise with this topic, Amrit, before you write your essay, where you do cause and effect. Okay, and you write something like, since cities develop faster than towns, many people choose to live in urban areas, so the number of farmers are decreasing. Okay, and then it's the number of is decreasing. All right, and then you can flip this. So there's your very important comma. The number of farmers are decreasing in rural areas since people choose to live in faster developing cities. Okay, so that would be a type of grammar practice, Amrit, as a little bit of a side note there on what you can do to practice your grammar related to this topic. So you can literally pull out sentences, think about them, and then play with them a little bit. So apply different grammar. Here I'm using cause and effect, subordinating conjunctions. The specific conjunction, subordinating conjunction I'm using is since, and you can see it in both cases here. And I'm using it in this case where I have the dependent clause first. followed by the independent clause second. Okay, and then in this case here, in the second one, I flipped it. Okay, so I'm using the independent clause first, and then the dependent clause second. Okay, so that kind of exercise can help to improve your dynamic use of complex grammar in your task 2. Okay. All right. Okay. So going back to the point here, we have our introductory paragraph. Let's take a look at the thesis statements. I said I would. So Khyber writes, the consequence of focusing less on the development of rural areas are unemployment and social segregation. Yeah, Khyber, parallel grammar, okay? Unemployment and segregation. You don't need social in that case, okay? This can be solved by more investment and allocation of more resources. Khyber, you're repeating yourself. So this can be solved by more investment in rural areas. Allocation and investment are the same word, okay? So Khyber, pay attention to parallel grammar. If you have a noun without an adjective, make sure your second one after the and is also a noun and you don't include the adjective. It's not necessary. You can clarify that later in the body paragraph. And then also make sure you don't repeat words, right? When you have, in this way, IELTS Task 2 is actually very challenging because you have to use your words very smartly. You can't double up on words like investing and allocating. Investing is allocating. Investing is more specific. It means allocating money, okay? So don't double up on that, all right? Investing equals allocating money, right? Okay, so careful, one or the other, but not both. Rashika says development and improved lifestyle, same thing, Rashika, right away, that's a repetition, right? So improved lifestyle often exists in cities than the countryside. This difference can be created. This difference can create social problems and lower lifestyles in rural areas. This conflict can be resolved by allocating equal resources to both rural and cities. Rashika, it doesn't sound like you're actually giving me more than the question in your thesis. So that kind of a thesis, Rashika, would only really get you a band 6 because you're not giving me more information. Okay? All right, so here, losing essential sectors and creating social segregation, this is going to be my body paragraph 1. And this is going to be my body paragraph 2. There's different ways to do this. So you can have problem solution in one body paragraph, then another problem solution in a second body paragraph. But here I'm just going to do one paragraph as the problems and another paragraph as the solution. Okay, so body paragraph 1. And by the way, this is how IELTS reading passages are structured. So body paragraph 1 will have a topic sentence, explanation, example, and a connecting sentence. Okay, body paragraph 2 is going to have the same. Body paragraphs are body paragraphs. They have the same structure. Okay. So body paragraph 2 will have the same. The difference, of course, being that body paragraph 1, the focus will be on the problems, and body paragraph 2, the focus will be, in this case, for this question, will be on the solutions. Okay? So that's the only difference. And then, of course, last but not least will be my conclusion. Okay, and we'll talk about the conclusion after the body paragraph. Okay. Yeah, Laura, connecting sentence, also called the concluding sentence. You'll see when we get there, it'll make sense. Okay. So, firstly, we need the topic sentence. The topic sentence is a deeper definition of thesis point 1. In this case, thesis point 1 is losing essential sectors. Okay. So let me define that. Rural areas provide society with the critical industry of agriculture. And when townships are underdeveloped, this industry suffers. Okay? That is my deeper definition of losing that essential sector, right? The farming sector. So rural areas provide society with the critical industry of agriculture, and when townships are underdeveloped, this industry suffers. Now comes my explanation. So what do we mean by that? Okay, be clear, use numbers and logic. Okay, well, obviously, the millions of potatoes and tomatoes and pounds of rice that's consumed by people in cities are not grown in the city park, okay? And that's kind of a harsh way to say it, so you have to maybe think about a little bit of a better way to say it, but that's the basic idea, right? I'm sure everybody agrees with me on that. Now, members, I know that I'm flying along here, but I do want you to write with me, and I will reference the chat and see how you're doing as you write along. And just simply put like T colon for topic sentence, or, you know, like this, or put, so T colon for topic sentence, or for the explanation. Now, don't do this in the real IELTS exam, of course, but just for practice so you know what you're doing. Okay, so millions of tons of food are grown worldwide in rural regions to support urban populations. Without this, not only do food prices skyrocket, but metropolitan development cannot be maintained if citizens starve. Okay. All right. And then this is where you can make up an example. And a lot of students do this. And this is where you can make up an example. So a recent consensus revealed that since 2020, the number of farmers in India have decreased by more than 30%, and this has led to an increase of 150% in food costs. Okay, so this is one of the problems that we're discussing. Now, we have to be careful because of our time limit, so you have to check yourself, make sure that you're able to write fast enough. If not, you might have to remove one of your problems. So remember, in my thesis, I said that due to higher rate of development in urban towns, societies are losing essential sectors and creating social segregation. If I don't have the ability to write about social segregation, I would just take that out. Okay. Now, I do have to be careful because the original question, okay, this is where a lot of thinking is involved to get that band 9 score, right? The question does say, what are the problems? So it's a plural, right? So I need at least 2 problems. Okay, then in this case, I'm going to keep my second problem, but just keep it really short. Okay. So are losing essential sectors and creating segregation. Social segregation. And I do that to have parallel grammar. Okay, if anything's not clear, you can always ask me. Okay. All right, so here I'm going to write a quick sentence. Furthermore, this leads to more poverty for countryside citizens, which in turn results in separation from other parts of society. Okay, so I'm going to stop there. I mean, we could explain this more, but I have to be careful. It is an IELTS essay. It is 350 words, so I can't get hung up on it for too long, okay? Here I need my connecting sentence. Fortunately, there are clear solutions for these challenges. Okay, so this now leads into my second body paragraph. Now again, before I go to my second body paragraph, I want to check my writing. Okay, check your writing. So rural areas provide society with the critical industry of agriculture. Okay, and when townships are underdeveloped, this industry suffers. Millions of tons of food are grown worldwide in rural regions to support urban populations. Without this, let's put some commas there. Not only do food prices skyrocket, but metropolitan development cannot be maintained if citizens starve. A recent consensus revealed that since 2020, the number of farmers in India have decreased by more than 30%, and this has led to an increase of 150% in food costs. Furthermore, this leads to more poverty for countryside citizens, which in turn results in separation from other parts of society. Fortunately, there are clear solutions to these challenges. Okay, so in order to balance the rate of development in the countryside settlements, governments must allocate finances, workers, and time. Indeed, when millions, now I gave the example of India, so I'm going to stick with India in this essay. Okay, so indeed, when millions of rupees are invested into building roads, hospitals, and schools in towns, people are drawn to live in rural regions and engage in the agricultural industry. This, in turn, leads to a greater production of food, which can then support cities or population growth. Growth and the development of cities. Okay. All right. So all I'm doing here, everyone, is just looking at my second thesis point here. This can be remedied with more resources allocated to rural areas. And in my topic sentence, I'm giving more of a definition to this, and then I'm explaining it with numbers and logic, and then I'm giving an example. Okay. So and I don't even need to write for example here. A clear example will connect easily to the explanation. Since 2010, the federal government of India has invested over 2 billion rupees into the rural regions surrounding New Delhi, and this created an increase of more than 5,000 new agricultural jobs, which has also stabilized food prices in the capital. Okay, so that's my example, very specific example. And now I can write my conclusion. I don't need a connecting sentence to the conclusion because the conclusion connects my entire essay, okay? So this connects the entire essay. No connecting sentence is needed before the conclusion. All right. Okay, so the conclusion also has a few parts. Now, before I get into the conclusion, again, I want to read my second body paragraph. All right. Tan Tui is asking, how can I get the data to use in writing task 2? Read millions of articles, academic articles on Google Scholar, for example. No, I'm just kidding, Tan Tu. Just make it up. Okay, so ton 2 is questions like, how can I get the data? Make it up. The IELTS, they don't care if it's real or not real. You just make it up. It should be believable, okay? But it doesn't have to be real, okay? So make up facts for examples in body paragraphs. Just make sure it's believable. I have never seen an IELTS examiner Google the fact, oh, is that true? Did they invest money into farmlands around New Delhi since 2010? Let me Google that right now. No, they don't do that, okay? So as long as it's believable, they'll be like, okay, it's a good example. In the IELTS, you can't do research, right? That's the big difference. In university, yeah, absolutely. You cannot make it up. You have to give real facts. But of course, in university, you have time to research and do the work at home, right? That's why it's a much longer, more accurate, better essay with real facts. But in the IELTS, you just make it up, okay? The IELTS people, they're looking at your communication style. They're not looking at the authenticity of your essay, okay? All right, so let's read this body paragraph too. In order to balance the rate of development in the countryside settlements, governments must allocate finances, workers, and time. Indeed, when millions of rupees are invested into building roads, hospitals, and schools, in towns, people are drawn, I need a comma there, people are drawn to live in rural regions and engage in the agricultural industry. Yeah. This in turn leads to greater production of food, which can then support population growth and development of cities. Since 2010, the federal government of India has invested over 2 billion rupees into rural regions surrounding New Delhi. Let's make that simpler, into towns surrounding New Delhi, and this created an increase of more than 5,000 new agricultural jobs, which has also stabilized food prices in the capital. Paraphrasing New Delhi. That sounds good. Conclusion. Okay. So, points restated. Okay, so it has a few different parts. So thesis points, paraphrased. So you have to state again what you're arguing or what you just argued in your essay. Okay. Argument emphasized, in this case, the solutions maybe. Okay, and then your take-home message. So, why are we reading your essay? Why is it important to read your essay? What value does your essay offer to the reader? That's your take-home message, okay? In good writing, that's very important. So writing that has an impact, writing that is valuable, has a take-home message. It tells the reader a piece of knowledge where the reader goes, oh, okay, so yeah, that's what we should do, or that's what I need to focus on, or that's what we as a society must consider. Okay, so that's our conclusion. So let me show you this, okay? Here we go. Thesis point paraphrased. Clearly, losing the contribution of countryside culture and creating social separation are problems arising from less development of such regions, or such demographic. It's a nice word for you. Demographic means area or group, okay? Such demographic. However, or nevertheless, by providing more resources this situation can be fixed. It is important to do this in order for the benefit of the society as a whole. Ultimately, the basic survival need of food comes from rural populations. Okay. So here I have my conclusion, and you know, when you're writing the conclusion, it is a good idea to write in conclusion instead of clearly, especially for the IELTS. They like to see that. Okay. All right. So I have my whole essay, and when you're practicing at home, what you want to do, everyone, is reread the question, go through your planning, go through the response. So ideally, you want to spend at least an hour and a half on a task 2 question when you're practicing at home. Depending on your skill level, you might even spend a little bit more time. So here the question was, or is, development and improved life quality often happens in big cities, but not in rural areas. What problems can happen as a result of this? How can this be changed? Okay, let's take a look. Again, at home, go through all your planning as well before you read your essay. Okay. So the primary goal of civilization is to develop human settlements as much as possible for better quality of life. However, cities tend to develop faster than rural areas because of the availability of resources such as workers, money, and greater demand. Due to a higher rate of development in urban areas than towns, societies are losing essential sectors and creating social segregation. This can be remedied with more resources allocated to rural areas. Rural areas provide society with the critical industry of agriculture, and when townships are underdeveloped, this industry suffers. Millions of tons of food are grown worldwide in rural regions. And I'm going to change that to farmlands to support urban populations. Without this, let's start a new sentence there. Without this, not only do food prices skyrocket, but metropolitan development cannot be maintained if citizens starve. Let's make that a real condition. A recent consensus revealed that since 2020, the number of farmers in India have decreased by more than 30%, and this has led to an increase of 150% in food costs. Furthermore, this leads to more poverty for countryside citizens, which in turn results in separation from other parts of society. Fortunately, there are clear solutions for these challenges. In order to balance the rate of development in the countryside settlements, governments must allocate finances, workers, and time. Indeed, when millions of rupees are invested into building roads, hospitals, and schools in towns, people are drawn to live in rural regions and engage in the agricultural industry. Let's say farming. This in turn leads to a greater production of food, which can then support population growth and development of cities. Since 2010, the federal government of India has invested over 2 billion rupees into towns surrounding New Delhi, and this created an increase of more than 5,000 new agricultural jobs, which has also stabilized food prices in the capital. In conclusion, losing the contribution of countryside culture and creating social separation are problems arising from less development of such demographics. Nevertheless, by providing more resources, this situation can be fixed. It is important to do this for the benefit of society. Ultimately, the basic survival need of food comes from rural populations. Okay, that's the take-home message. Let's not forget. All right, the essay sounds good. It reads like a Band 8, Band 9 essay. It answers the question, uses the right range of vocabulary, uses the right range of grammar, and really focuses on that problems and solutions throughout the essay. Okay, here we go. Eldar is not my brother, Amrit. He has no blood relation. He's not even in the same country, Amrit. He's in Turkey. He is employed by the company. All right. Great job, everybody, in the class. If anybody has questions related to this class, you can always send me an email. Okay, again, my email is all the way up at the top here. So here's my email, adrian@aehelp.com. And again, students, remember to check out our websites, aehelp.com for academic IELTS and gieltshelp.com for general IELTS. We are British Council agents. We're certified by the British Council. We have over 20 years of experience training thousands of individuals to succeed on the IELTS exam. Our courses, they're one-time payment for lifetime access, so you don't need to pay every month. That's silly. You just need to pay once. It's one price, doesn't cost a lot. You get practice exams. You get an interactive course, you get strategies, you get lots of videos. Use this code XR9T for that 25% discount. That discount code is coming from our most recent HD video release on our YouTube channel. Make sure to subscribe. That is a reading video, and you will enjoy that. There's a British reader that will help you to read the passage, and then we go through the answers together. Okay, everybody, another class coming up in 30 minutes. I'll be back in half an hour, and that class will be reading. So we are going to do a live reading class here, and it's kind of an interesting topic coming up in that class. So definitely be here, come back, take a break, get a glass of water, refresh yourself, and then get ready to learn for the reading section. Thank you, Carolina, for moderating the class, helping answer some questions for our members. Thank you, members, for your participation. Remember, practice is key, so practice your writing. See you in 30 minutes, everybody. Bye for now.